It is called the Orion Astropreneur Space Academy. Orion, one of the nebulas where stars born. Astropreneur, entrepreneur, because Hong Kong is basically about business and entrepreneurship. Astropreneur is creation of business with a space context. New businesses create jobs. So when we talk about space economy, we have to think about jobs. Now these are relevant. And why Space Academy? Because this is a leadership development accelerator. We accelerate leaders and startups for the world, beginning from Hong Kong.
Zone, it's like United, but it's very pretty.
Space is for everybody. Everybody, not only for certain individuals, but it is for everybody, all humanity. Second, the space economy is already here. And so we have a lot of pioneers who join forces with us. Why is it important that you need to get involved now? Because if we miss this opportunity, it's going to be difficult. And a third is about young people. We need young people, new leaders who can inspire us and take us to the next level. So these are our 3 beliefs.
Come join OASA. The future is already here.
Come join OASA, be our member.
Come join OASA and become a part of the global space economy.
Come join OASA. Let's work together.
Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Entrepreneurship to Astropreneurship. My name is Perry Lam, and I'm Vice Chairman of OASA Hong Kong. I will also serve as moderator today with our esteemed panel of guests who will be able to share with you the vast amount of experience, the wealth of knowledge, and invaluable insights in terms of today's session. For our first-time guests, you may be asking yourself, what is OASA Hong Kong? OASA stands for the Orion Astropreneur Space Academy. Orion is the brightest constellation, which is located in the celestial Ecuador. And we're focusing in as an accelerator to support leadership and startups for the opportunities within the space ecosystem. Our first office was established here in Hong Kong back in 2020. To begin our session today, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to our host venue sponsors, Cyberport, who quarterly support our Entrepreneurship series of webinars. As you can see, we also have a growing list within the ecosystem of companies supporting our endeavors within OASA, Hong Kong, and looking at exploring the opportunities within the space economy. At OASA, we have 3 space missions. Mission 1, Space Accelerator, which we have launched this year. And in fact, today's webinar is part of it, in which we're focusing on accelerating leadership training and export startups. Mission 2, Space Ready. And we want to look at CubeSat exploration within Hong Kong, in particular, focusing in on the education system. And then Mission 3, Space Pioneers, which will be later in 2025, the opportunity to put youth in space. So Mission 1, Space Accelerator, Mission 2, Space Ready, and Mission 3, Space Pioneers. To elaborate a little further on Mission 1, we're looking at various events as well as programs conducted by OASA. For example, events, the quarterly Entrepreneurship webinars here in Cyberport, as well as we've been hosting monthly WAVE webinars. In terms of our program, launching our Mission Moonshot Masterclass, focusing in on accelerating the development of companies' high potentials to provide greater value to the organizations, as well as accelerating their career aspirations. And later in the future, we'll be focusing and launching our Young Marco Polo program, which will be a global endeavor. So these are some examples of OASA's events and programs. So our agenda for today will be the following. I'll be starting off focusing on voice of the customer, looking at Hong Kongers as well as startups getting involved in the space economy. Secondly, Joseph Jeong, serial investor and entrepreneur and co-founder of EXLskills, will be sharing with us his valuable insights in terms of entrepreneurship. Where are the opportunities? And thirdly, Christopher Altman, NASA-trained astronaut and co-founder of the UAPX, will be sharing with us his thoughts and insights in terms of commercialization of the space economy. And that will be our agenda for our webinar today. Let's start today's webinar focusing on the basic definition of the voice of the customer. Simply put, it's the process for capturing the customer's requirements. Given that, it produces a very detailed set of customer wants, needs, and expectations. It's organized in a very hierarchical structure and prioritized in terms of the relative importance as well as customer satisfaction of either the products or services that are provided. During today's webinar, we'll look at it from a perspective of entrepreneurship as well as exploring the commercialization of the space economy. Recently, there's been a lot of media coverage in terms of the opportunities of space tourism. Think for a moment, for us here in Hong Kong, where will we go to secure a ticket for this wonderful opportunity? Several years back, Miramar Travel, and here is Alex Lee, had secured exclusive rights to be able to be the official space tourism agent for the Virgin Galactic flights. In fact, they are the accredited space agents, not only here in Hong Kong, but also throughout Southeast Asia. So the opportunities within Hong Kong are vast in terms of space tourism. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker for today's webinar, Joseph Jeong, a serial investor, entrepreneur, and a co-founder of EXLskills. Joy will be sharing with us today, entrepreneurship. Where are the opportunities? Joey, the stage is yours.
Here you are, Joey. Welcome.
Thank you, Perry. Great to be here and talking about such an exciting industry today. I know that they don't talk about this much in school or in everyday life, but you're going to start hearing a lot more about it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the growth in the space industry, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about how fast it's growing, and then we're gonna meet a real astronaut, Christopher Altman, and let's go off from that. So today, entrepreneurship to Astronpreneurs, and we're gonna talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, and then we'll go into the Astropreneurship. This is a photo of Christopher and I in our spacesuits, and also another photo of Franklin Chang Diaz, who has graciously supplied us with a few of the lovely slides that we have today. And he's on the forefront of the space industry. He is Franklin is a 7-time astronaut, went on 7 missions into space on the Russian spacecraft as well as the space shuttle. And he's also starting a rocket company called Ad Astra. So, hopefully in the future we can have him on as well. But so I want to start with kind of entrepreneurship and also, how to succeed in what you're trying to do. Okay. And one of the, I want to share a few of my secrets. One of the few secrets is that you need to find something that you really love doing. Okay. Because once you really find that, then you are always learning. You learn, 10 times faster. You want to always try to read up on that. And nobody needs to tell you, oh, you have an assignment today, or you have to do this today. You're automatically doing it because you love doing that even on your spare time. Okay. So you need to find that. And I'll share with you a strategy on how to do that. Many people kind of don't think about this and don't do this step. This is an extremely important step because you don't want to wind up, middle-aged and just taking the first job that you had and then realizing, oh, I really don't like what I'm doing. And then realizing that half of your career has passed and you're doing something that you really, really don't care for. Okay, so first of all, start early. Find something that you really love. The third one is really interesting, and I've had the luck of experiencing this. But I found an industry that was the fastest growing industry in my time when I graduated college, and that has helped me throughout my career. Because if you find a fast growing industry, well, you're going to get a lot more promotions. If you do a startup, you're going to be able to get a lot more funding. And everything that goes with it is going to be in a growth phase rather than a declining phase. So many people don't think about this, but they choose any industry, or they don't really think about it. But if you choose a growth industry, your personal growth is going to be much faster than not. Okay, so and then set a very, very high moonshot goal, because if you set a high goal for yourself, A, you have something to achieve, but B, people will help you. If you set a very low goal, nobody needs to help you. So, you don't have any help. But if you set a high goal, actually people want to help you because they say, wow, this guy's going somewhere, this girl's going somewhere, let's help them. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Joey.
one of the first things is finding what you love. And I'll give you an example. I love, I started learning about investing when I was 13 years old. Okay. And I love learning about investing and trading. And I also love math. That was one of the few things I was good at in school. I was good at math. And then I love technology, computers and everything. So the intersection of those is what I do today, which is investing in innovative technology companies and disruptive innovation, and really getting into some of these new companies and doing the private equity. So, and some of these are the fastest growing industries. So I want you to take a look at some of these. And of course, the space industry is in there as well. But, if you get yourself involved in some of these very fast growing industries, you're going to have many, many more opportunities. So these are some of the industries that I invest in. And so I wanted to come and talk about the space industry. I've been involved in investing in the last 3 rounds of SpaceX, and also hopefully some of the new companies as well. And there's a couple of SPACs that's been just rocketing up the space, that's also space related as well. So, yeah, this is one of the slides that Franklin Chang Diaz, he was one of the first immigrants that joined NASA.
Really?
Yeah, very first immigrant that went on a NASA space mission.
Hmm.
And he's part Chinese and he's part Costa Rican. So, so we're going to talk a little bit about this today. Right now, the space industry is a $360 billion industry. Now, you see all of those dots? Those are all the satellites up in space. Now, they've been launched over the last 25, 30 years.
Wow.
And now it's getting a little cluttered. Okay, so there's a lot that needs to be done. And a few of the things that needs to be done is, well, once you have a lot of old rockets up there, you have a lot of rockets that are out of orbit, so you need to pull them back into orbit. You need to clean up a lot of debris that's been sitting up there. So there's all kinds of things that you need to do up there. And a chemical rocket up in space just doesn't make sense because you can't carry all that fuel. So that's what Ad Astra is doing, and these are he's making an a rocket that uses a plasma engine that propels everything, and it can use solar energy, it can use hydrogen energy, it can use nuclear energy. So yeah, so that's then you don't have to bring all of the chemical and fuel up to space because that's very, very inefficient. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done up there. And these are some of the things that you can think about, even space mining. Another huge industry. I mean, some of these asteroids are said to be worth trillions,
Right.
okay, because they contain resources that we really need on Earth. So asteroid mining is another very hot topic right now, and it's something that, you know, what used to be a pretty kind of boring topic of you know, mining and geology and stuff like that. Sorry, not boring, but slow growth. Now it has all of a sudden become a very lucrative industry if you're looking at it from the space angle. Okay, so some of the other industries that we can look into is, of course, travel, space tourism, right? So if you want to work at a hotel, well, right now is probably the worst time to be working in a hotel, but space tourism, that is a very fast growing industry. Geology, you can look at asteroid mining. Psychology, well, you definitely need some psychologists up in space. Even farming and botany. Space farming is one of the most interesting, and, you know, applying what we've learned on Earth in terms of vertical farming up in space and up in the moon colony as well as the Mars colony. They're going to need a lot of that. Doctors, engineers, and such. Okay.
Sure. I mean, it's amazing, Joey. I never realized all these opportunities
Yes,
that are emerging here in the space economy.
exactly. And those opportunities all exist in on Earth, of course, but they're pretty slow growing industries, and maybe there isn't as many opportunities, or there's a lot more competition. Okay, but if you apply that into the space industry, well, all of a sudden they become hugely, you know, fast growing industries, right? So this is a photo of a future space hotel where we have low Earth orbit, and Virgin Galactic is one of the leaders in that, and also, you know, Miramar Travel here in Hong Kong can book those trips. Another one is looking at both the moon and Mars. They're gonna build these things. I mean, these things are gonna happen, and we're gonna need a lot of experts to think about the vertical farming that happens in greenhouses on Mars and in on the moon as well.
Right. Fascinating.
Yeah. And how cool will it be to be a doctor on a space station? Of course, you can be a doctor at the local hospital as well, but, you know, let's say that might sound a little bit more cool.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, geology and looking at all the space mining stuff, is very, very interesting stuff. So we're gonna have, you know, Christopher Altman come on and talk about his experience in the commercial space industry, which is an entirely new industry. Okay, and yeah, so we'll start with that and have Chris come on. He's standing by, and so should we get Chris on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
excellent.
So thank you very much, Joey, for sharing those insights in terms of entrepreneurship and the opportunities within a space economy. What we're going to do now is switch over to Chris Altman, who's actually coming to us via transmission from the Philippines as such. So we'll just take a couple of seconds to hook him in, and then we'll turn it over to Chris to provide us with some sharing as such. So Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, we can. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Chris Altman. We're very privileged here. Introduction through Joey. Christopher is a NASA-trained astronaut, and you look through his bio as such, he's had many different accolades and achievements, both in the areas of education, as well as space and investments as such. So with that, Chris, I'll be turning it over to you and let you take in control from your side. Chris
Well,
Altman.
thanks. So I had the opportunity to train at NASA and with the commercial spaceflight organization, the Association of Spaceflight Professionals, as a commercial astronaut for upcoming suborbital and orbital space flights. So throughout history of mankind, we've seen a lot of transition points that have changed both mankind and our relationship to society and nature. These like the steam engine, the printing press, the internal combustion engine, the airplane, the computer, and now the internet, World Wide Web, and now going forward with spaceflight. And as we open up spaceflight to the public, it's going to transform both our relationship with nature, with ourselves, with humanity, with self-identity, and it's going to be more than just an economic thing. It's going to be a self-identity thing. So one of the key aspects of renewable space, of commercial spaceflight that's making it possible to be opening up is because SpaceX is developing renewable rockets. These rockets are going to be recycled entirely. So they'll be launched and then land the same day and just refuel and then go back up again. Whereas before, rockets were just thrown away, discarded whenever they were launched. Now they're going to actually reduce cost by about 99.5% once they get everything in order and it's all recyclable. So that'll bring the cost of sending yourself or any cargo to orbit by orders of magnitude. So we're now a little bit over 50 years since Apollo 11, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. And so we're just now getting to the point where commercialization is opening up. SpaceX has been providing astronaut flights over the last year or so, but going back to 2004 was really when it started out. Spaceship One won the Ansari X Prize in October 4 of 2004, which kind of is what started the era of private spaceflight, because since then they've been flying test flights with Virgin Galactic, and they're planning to have customer flights over the next year or so. So SpaceX and both Virgin Galactic and SpaceX, Spaceship Two is now undergoing extensive tests, and more than 500 customers have already purchased tickets. These customers include people like Leonardo DiCaprio and Angelina Jolie. So these are not low-profile customers by any means. These are high-profile people that are going to be doing this, and that's probably because it's expensive. But as the cost comes down, again, as these are recyclable and the research and development costs are recouped, then the cost is going to be coming down exponentially, opening up access to the everyday person. So looking at Crew Dragon is one of SpaceX's key launch providers. Since last year was the first mission that was taking NASA astronauts to orbit. Crew Dragon was took in May, I think May 28 of last year, took Commander Doug Hurley. He was pilot of the last shuttle flight, took him and another astronaut to the ISS, followed by another flight in October where they took 4 astronauts to the ISS. So now SpaceX is routinely shuttling astronauts to orbit. And this is the SpaceX Starship, which is what they're developing now. They've been launching test flights almost on a daily basis to develop the next generation of their rocket called Starship. So Boeing CEO Dennis Mueller says, within a decade, we're going to see space travel become commonplace, not just to the ISS, but to other destinations such as space tourism and space factories. Whereas it's going to be orders of magnitude greater in development. Right now, it's about $300 billion economy, and by 2040, it's going to be a $1.1 trillion economy. So coming up next year, SpaceX Inspiration 4 all civilian crew is going to be taking the first 4 civilian astronauts. These are people who are not commercial astronauts, they're not government astronauts, they're just regular civilians who have chartered a flight. And so there's going to be 4 of them, started with CEO Jared Isaacman from Shift 4 Payments, and he's getting 3 regular people that he's choosing from a children's research hospital to go with him on this flight. Also, another SpaceX flight coming up, one of the first Starship flights, is going to be from Yusaku Maezawa in 2023. He's a Japanese billionaire, and he's looking for 8 people to go with him on this, people who push the envelope. He was originally looking for artists, but now he's looking for anybody who pushes the envelope and takes things to the next level. So anybody can apply, anybody from around the world, including you. So here's his little advertisement, Dear Moon, 8 crew members wanted for mission to the moon. So this is anticipated for 2023 if you know, everything goes according to schedule with flight tests. We also have commercial space stations coming online over the next couple of years. One of the first is going to be Axiom Space. It's a commercial space station that was founded by the same manager who manages the International Space Station. And Axiom Space Flight is going to be primarily research and development, but they do have the potential to allow for passengers who are going to stay as a hotel. We also have Bigelow Aerospace, who has Space Complex Alpha. Bigelow has had an inflatable habitat as an extension of the ISS since 2016. So he's had this inflatable module on the ISS for testing purposes to demonstrate its resilience in space and its capacity to do research and development, scientific research and testing. So Bigelow Aerospace is going to have their own space station over the next couple of years. These are the inflatable habitats. They're not just for orbit. He's anticipating to have them on the moon as well. And of course, as you know, NASA's Artemis project aims to have the first woman on the moon by 2024. And this is to go onto the moon and to stay rather than just as a temporary excursion. The idea is to set up permanent bases that'll be there for scientific research and development. And going forward, even, you know, a couple of decades to colonies. Space hotels, which are, you know, science fiction nowadays, also are going to be coming online over the next few years. A smaller one will come from Orion Span, Aurora Station, and it have room for, I think, 4 guests. A very small, you know, initial pilot project, but they're raising funds now to do their own space hotel. And then there's a larger one, Voyager Station, from Orbital Assembly, that's scheduled for 2027. And this one is going to be rotating itself around the axis at about 1G. So it's not going to be that different than being on Earth. You know, when you're out at the edge of those spokes, it'll be closer to 0G when you go to the middle. But as you can see here, their plans for establishing the hotel include people just sitting around and looking out the view in a 1G environment. And these are, you know, anticipated to be online in 2027. And very ambitious, a lot larger than the other ones. And as Joseph mentioned before, we have asteroid mining, which would, you know, have trillions of dollars per asteroid that would just basically collapse the global economy if you got one of these things and brought it back to Earth, because the cost of gold would just bottom out, et cetera, et cetera. But primarily, the most important thing about these asteroids is the potential for water, because water will give you rocket fuel, water will give you breathable air, and water will give you drinkable water. You could break it down into hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel, the constituent parts. These are available on the moon. We found water resources on the moon, so we can mine water on the moon and mine hydrogen on the moon. SpaceX plans to send 1 million people to Mars by 2050 by launching 3 Starship rockets every day. Now, he hopes to have the first Starship land on Mars 2025, which is well ahead of anything that NASA has planned. And it's a rather ambitious timeline, of course, but Musk has always been rather ambitious with his timelines. So he wants to have the first Starship land on Mars 2025 and 1 million people within 25 years after that, by launching 3 Starship rockets every day. eventually terraforming Mars was his long-term ambition. So it's in context of this commercial environment that with NASA regularly shuttling astronauts to the ISS with commercial providers and all these new commercial providers coming online, that NASA started the Commercial Crew Program. And so we got some Association of Spaceflight Professionals was started by some highly qualified astronaut candidates and some current and former NASA astronauts and astronaut trainers who they put together the organization to conduct research for organizations and to fill the commercial crew component of the manned spaceflight missions. This is some of the training that they've done. And so I was selected for this after doing some training at NASA in NASA JSC, Johnson Space Center in Houston. And in 2011, we went through this program itself. We had four candidates, and we went through sea and wilderness survival, analog scuba training, hypoxia awareness training, high centrifuge mission simulation, aviation training, SMS, space motion sickness adaptation training, zero G gravity flights, and emergency egress flights. So these training procedures were established by former astronauts, and the selection of the committee was also current and former astronauts. And so they're looking for scientists who are well established in their field to provide a structured training program for them to have, if they're looking for people with a broad range of technical skills who have aviation experience, which provides procedural discipline. And they're looking for candidates who have engaged in activities that have a genuine mitigatable risk, such as committing to a hazardous environment that you can't instantly dissociate from, such as skydiving, scuba diving, glider pilot, or ice climbing, this kind of thing. So there's some of my background is involved in international in Japan and martial arts, and with some of these glider pilot and motorcycling, scuba diving, and zero G flights. So that's why I applied for the program. Then in 2009, I was recruited to NASA for a startup there, a think tank for next generation government leaders. And through there, I was part of Pisces, which is a Pacific International Space Center for Exploration Systems. It's on the summit of Mauna Kea. And what we do there is we test next generation spacesuits, next generation lunar rovers, in situ resource development for sustainable habitats, and next generation computer systems for the upcoming manned lunar and Mars missions. And also part of my background, I started co-founder of SolarCoin, which is a kind of a incentive solar. It's a startup it's a blockchain provider to establish to establish a solar-based economy and to bring it also to space and to establish a post-scarcity economy. Since then, we've been featured in Science and Nature, as well as several other publications. We have 17 flight members and over 200 associate members. Anybody's welcome to join, including anybody in Hong Kong. There's a current map of the membership profile. We don't have anybody in Asia. So Joseph, Barry, you guys need to get some people from the audience to join.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris.
Yeah, I think people are just not aware of these opportunities, and that's what we're here to do, is make people aware of these opportunities, and especially for our younger audience out there. I know there's some high schools kind of listening, and universities, as well as some early startups, etc. But for the high schoolers out there, one of the youngest space or astronaut trainees was 16 years old when she started. Alyssa, I had that slide up earlier, but there's a long training process involved in some of these things. So it's best to get started right now, get started really early, and you'll have a very exciting career ahead of you.
Yeah,
right.
So maybe
So
Chris and Elizabeth as well, you can give us some insights in terms of someone interested in Hong Kong. How could they follow this how could they pursue this opportunity?
Right. Well, as Joseph said, you should follow your passion first and foremost. It would help if you have experience in scientific field, because scientists are first and foremost. Scientists and engineers are in high demand first in the space industry. It helps if you have some experience in aviation, in scuba diving, and in hazardous environments such as flying or ice climbing, anything that's a potential danger where you can mitigate the risks and get some procedural discipline. Here's some photos from some of our training and some of our research experiments. So what we've done here is we have some microgravity testing, and we're testing different technologies. This is some of the pictures from our space motion sickness adaptation training and high centrifuge, high G training. It's another one with the biometric testing in zero-G flight, microgravity. So we also have Soyun Yi. She's actually, this is not a zero-G flight. This is the ISS. So she is a Korean astronaut who was spent several weeks on the International Space Station, and she's also one of our members. And as an opportunity, as a consequence of the opportunities I've been provided with as part of the organization, I've been fortunate to meet all kinds of astronauts, other astronauts, and leaders in the space industry. On the top left there, that's Neil Armstrong. And on the top right, that is Buzz Aldrin, obviously Apollo 11. On the bottom there, that's Doug Hurley. He was the commander of the final shuttle flight and the commander of the first SpaceX Crew Dragon flight last year in May 28. And on the right here, we have Kjell Lindgren. He's a newer NASA astronaut who's just been to the ISS once and is also signed up for the Artemis project to go to the moon in 2024. Here's some more pictures with Soyun and some other astronauts. So we have some milestones where we established the organization and as a nonprofit, partnering with some of the different federations and training providers along with NASA. It was in 2011 when I conducted some of the training, and then in 2012 was when this first space flight was selected for the organization. This is through the NASA Flight Opportunities Program. The two that were selected actually first up in 2012 was biometric monitoring, is a wireless biometric meter, and noctilucent cloud photography. These are clouds that are seeded by asteroids, and asteroids seed these clouds in the high upper atmosphere, and they have a role in both evolution of life and in climate change. So NASA is obviously very interested in these high altitude clouds. They've been very difficult to get pictures of, and so they have suborbital missions designed just to get photos of these clouds. So these are two of the examples of, if you have research of your own you're interested in doing, and you submit an application to NASA, say you're an engineer developing a wireless biometric meter, if you submit this application, you can take it up on a microgravity flight. Going forward, as soon as these flights come online, you can take it up with Blue Origin, suborbital flight, or orbital flights with SpaceX, as well as Virgin Galactic. So back in 2012, so the book was first released about our organization. And done some outreach since, been covered by multiple mainstream publications. But the key is to prepare humanity to become a multidisciplinary species. The overview effect is when astronauts go to space, see the Earth from space, and have a kind of a paradigm shift in transformation in how they see themselves and the world around them. They see nature as more connected, humanity as more connected to nature, and the thin ribbon of the atmosphere is so fragile, and Earth is so fragile. It's much more clear and very front and foremost that we need to take care of nature and take care of our planet, because it's a lot more rare and precious than people are aware of today, because they're just going about their daily lives without considering these things. Some of the technologies that I've been involved with through scientific research involve, for space-based, involve quantum communications, which utilizes quantum superposition and entanglement to generate secure communications. Now, these are connected by satellites that utilize lasers for secure communications. And going forward, there's going to be a quantum internet that connects all around the globe using lasers and fiber optics, using what they call entangled photons for secure communications and for exponentially powerful computation. So quantum computing is another example. that of computing paradigm uses entanglement and superposition, mostly entanglement to generate exponential computing power that's as different from a regular classical computer as a light bulb is from a laser. Going forward, not just with commercial spaceflight, but going forward with physics, as some of the more advanced concepts going, is Alcubierre was developed what he called a warp drive. This is kind of like the Star Trek warp drive in 1990s, and the idea was to generate a warp bubble around the ship, so the ship is not even moving inside of its reference frame, whereas it's compressing space-time in front of it and expanding it behind it, so it actually can exceed the speed of light outside of its reference frame. This was always a esoteric sci-fi sounding concept, of course, because it utilized what was required was negative energy in order to create this thing. And so it was always out of question, out of bounds to actually create one, not an engineering possibility. Whereas just last week, we've moved closer to a real working warp drive because the scientists have put forward a new formula that will create a warp drive without the requirement for negative energy. It just requires regular old energy and a strong gravitational field. It would be about 60 times more powerful, 60 orders of magnitude more powerful than our current base fission reactors, nuclear reactors. No, 30 times more powerful. But we have potential energy saving mechanisms that can lower the energy required to create these by about 60 orders of magnitude. So all of a sudden, this has moved from a science fiction to science fact. It's now an engineering problem, a physics problem. That's an engineering problem, and it looks like it could actually be possible to create a working warp drive. The scientists who produced this paper last week in physical review letters actually have a startup that they've established that they plan actually to build these things, prototypes of warp drives. So we're living in an era where warp drives are no longer science fiction, Joseph. They're now science fact. So they would anticipate we could get to Proxima Centauri within 4 years, whereas chemical rockets would take 70,000. So this is a scale up of a warp drive, just a concept art that NASA commissioned to visualize what a warp drive could look like. So yeah, we're now living in an era where science fiction becomes science fact, and we're at the precipice of becoming a multi-planetary species. The Earth is the cradle of humanity, but mankind cannot stay in the cradle forever. And that was where I wanted to open it for questions.
Thank you, Chris. That was amazing. It's just unbelievable how fast the technology is growing just in the last few years. You know, once they've opened it up to the commercial sector and allowed the innovation, before it was just for governments to do this, and it was a very, very slow process. But once they've opened it up to the commercial sector, there's so many startups now in Los Angeles right now around SpaceX. There's so many new startups popping up around SpaceX and also in Texas as well. So unbelievable number of opportunities there for all the young people in the audience. So hopefully let's try to get some. Yeah.
The three major players here are Sir Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic, of course, Elon Musk with SpaceX, and Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, with Blue Origin. Blue Origin is lesser well known. He's not been so open about what they're doing, but going forward, they do have ambitions to be as big as SpaceX.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Should we open it up for questions?
That's right. What we're going to ask is everyone who's been following to us today on the webinar, please send in some questions to your login, and we'll be able to entertain those amongst the three of us. But I guess for both of your presentations, I mean, I'm just sitting here having some great insights and the opportunities here. So many of you may think, because we're in Hong Kong, how can we engage, right? Think about, as startups, think about your existing opportunities, saying what you're doing. How could you leverage further or even exploit some of the topics that have been talked about and covered by these two gentlemen in terms of the space economy? So Joey's giving you some tips. What else can you share with the group in terms of moving forward, let's say in Hong Kong, because we're at Cyberport, we have 1,000 startups here.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful that Cyberport is supporting this this broadcast and this program, OASA program, and that's the very first step of doing that. Also, to reach out to the universities and to the high schools, I think that's a very important step going forward as well, because we really need the younger people to get involved in this, because it does require a lot of training. Not only that, but it will spur the STEM learning in high schools, because if you make it interesting and you apply that the space industry to the STEM learning, wow, the students are going to be so excited about learning about all of this, the STEM, right? Because if you don't apply it and you only learn from a book, it's much less interesting. So for students, if the government wants a lot more STEM students and a lot more students to be interested in that, then this is a very good way to get them excited about learning STEM, right? And so I highly encourage any high schools, universities out there to reach out to us, and we can definitely collaborate with you on how to put some of these programs into your classrooms.
Right. Absolutely, Joey. In fact, one of the questions that we have from the audience links directly to what you just shared with us. The question is the following: what support do you wish you had when you were a commercial astronaut or a startup entrepreneur? Yes. How much of would it be of having a leadership coach help an astronaut such as yourself or an entrepreneur?
Yeah, in terms of just having a guidance towards that, I think this is the first step in terms of just listening to things that are new, things that are happening out there. I think that's really, really important, because that's outside of what we talk about every day. So when you talk to some of these leaders, they really expand your realm of thinking. And so, on an everyday basis, you're not talking about this, right? And the fact that we're just talking about it today is already helping the community and hopefully getting a lot more people involved.
Right. And how about from your side, Chris, when you were
That's
beginning as an astronaut?
essential. It's absolutely essential that you have somebody who has the experience that you can relate to in this, particularly because it's such a rare endeavor. And it can be very discouraging, because the probabilities are, astronomical to be selected for these kind of things. So having somebody who's been through the experience, who has some of the technical expertise and the mentorship, leadership guidance, who can, you can bounce ideas off of, and who can encourage you even when things are discouraging, is absolutely essential for somebody to have as they're developing their skills in this field. So of course, I would encourage you to write to your nearest astronaut, and go ahead and don't be afraid to ask for advice.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. And it just happens that at OASA Hong Kong, we have something called the Mission Moonshot Masterclass, which also provides coaching and mentorship. So those who may be interested, drop us a line. We're happy to share more. Joey?
Yeah, and for those that are watching on my Facebook broadcast, if you have any questions, please send them in as well.
Right. Okay. And we've got a couple other questions here. In quantum communication used nowadays, I guess this is for you, Chris, or is it going for implement in the next commercial tripods?
Yeah.
Yeah, both Joey and I are squinting here.
Yeah.
The screen's
So I
pretty
think it's just
far-fetched.
asking, is quantum communication being used today, or is that something that is that they're building for the future?
Right. So quantum communications, quantum cryptography is much further ahead of quantum computing. Quantum computing is really in its infancy, whereas we do have primitive quantum cryptography, quantum communications networks in place. We don't have a quantum internet per se yet, because we don't have quantum repeaters, but we do have local node-to-node communications that can be used by governments for secure communications, by insurance companies or banking, those in the banking industry or with stocks. They're actually using these networks now, today, and there's a few companies that are working with them. Going forward, the entire internet is going to have a quantum side to it that will have exponential computing capacity available via shared entanglement between qubits, and as well as secure authentication between your identity and as to the security of your communications message itself. So yeah, it's much further along than people would think. It's available now if you have enough deep enough pockets, and if you're interested in purchasing this.
Right. Another question from Philip. What are some specific areas that space technology can be applied now to solve climate change, conservation, and even carbon reduction?
Joseph? Well, in situ resource development is the first thing that comes to mind. ISRU, in situ resource development, is essential for any kind of manned colonies or Mars or on the moon in order to be sustainable. So what they're using is they're using recyclables. Everything is recycled. The air, the water, the food is locally grown. So these are all things that increase the sustainability of the colony or the base you've got on the moon or Mars. And as these technologies are equally applicable to Earth, if you want a more sustainable footprint on Earth.
I mean, for instance, you know, GPS, a lot of farming techniques, as well as, you know, all the weather detection and all of that stuff, that all came from NASA and all the space exploration. If we didn't do the space exploration before, we wouldn't have those technologies. And a lot of the technologies now that we're developing is going to come into our everyday lives. It, you know, it's going to seem like it's kind of like alien technology, but it's actually stuff that's been working on for 10, 20 years already in space. And finally, we're going to have that available on Earth. A lot of the biotechnology stuff that they're working on in space, especially the gene editing and stuff like that, is going to come into our lives and help us hopefully cure cancer and stuff like that as well. So yeah, there's many technologies that they work on space that eventually they commercialize on Earth that helps all humankind. So
yeah, in fact, here in Hong Kong, for example, fortunately, through GPS, as Joey's mentioned, and Baidu, we've got 5G. And with that, through satellite transmission, which is really today's, I would say, gold in terms of our currency, makes connectivity available. Smart cities, you look at Hong Kong Airport, we've got autonomous vehicles that are operating today, as well as looking at the buildings Joey's mentioned that we've got management of, as well as looking at weather forecasting.
So imagine a day pretty soon, not too far away, without smartphones. So you probably don't need your smartphone pretty soon. And part of the reason is because, you know, of the development of smart glass and also AR, VR. All that technology requires the latest in space internet and everything, and 5G internet. Once that occurs, then all of that is going to become possible. And we're going to be using much more AR and VR in our daily lives. And that's actually going to be a lot closer than you think. Just like nobody would have imagined when they launched the iPhone, you know, how far this industry has gone.
Yes, absolutely. So moving on, we've got a number of questions here from the audience. Let me go through a couple of them now. One of them obviously is the following. To you, Chris, as you know, as an astronaut, what has been the toughest test for you on getting you to where you are today?
Toughest test. It's not really anything related to being an astronaut that is a test. I mean, you go through, you apply, you know that the chances are not very high, and you just you go through it again and again. And as far as the training goes, I think you know, the training is a lot of fun. Actually, I didn't find any parts of it difficult. But more so than anything, it's the research, the scientific research that you do, that's going to be, you definitely need a mentor to guide you in scientific research, if that's the venue that you choose, whether that be science or engineering. Definitely important to have a good mentor.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Another question from the audience is such, and I think this one's for you, Joey. As reported by the National History Museum, there are currently 34,000 pieces of junk flying around in space. So with that, what are your views on the opportunities there in terms of space economy?
Yeah, there's probably more than 34,000 pieces of space junk. And one of the things that I had the pleasure of speaking to the astronaut Franklin Chang Diaz is this exact problem. Is that right now there isn't a vehicle in low Earth orbit that can go and clean up this debris, that can go and actually move satellites around that's gone off orbit. There's many different space logistics things that need to be done, that needs to be cleaned up. Satellites that are getting old that needs to be fixed. All of these things are a huge opportunity. And they so Ad Astra right now is developing that plasma engine that's going to be able to not use chemical fuel and be able to use some of the newer fuels to be able to just move things around logistically. And that's actually the very first very lucrative part of the space industry. You know, the stuff that's going to Mars or to Alpha Centauri, that's much later on, and that's very exciting, and that's what you hear about more, but that's not going to make any money for the foreseeable future. What's actually going to make money is a lot of the space logistics stuff that's going to happen, and they really need that rocket, which is actually being developed with NASA in cooperation with NASA right now. So that's a very exciting
Perry.
field.
Yes, Chris.
Perry, do you know about what's called the Kessler syndrome? Have you heard of that?
No, tell us more about that, Chris.
So Kessler syndrome is kind of a disastrous scenario that's anticipated if we're ever going to go to war in space, or if there was a bad accident in space, especially in the lower bounds of low Earth orbit, less so than the geostationary orbits up high. But Kessler syndrome is what would happen if there was a cascade of satellites impacting each other that would generate millions of pieces of debris, and essentially would close off low Earth orbit to spaceflight access for potentially hundreds of years. So it's kind of a worst case scenario. It's called the Kessler syndrome, where the space junk would be so much space junk moving so quickly that it would be difficult to make any kind of launch that in a safe manner. And as far as active debris removal goes, there's actually a startup in Tokyo, Japan, that I applied for, was recruited for actually last year, called Astroscale. And they're doing active debris removal, and they're doing end of lifespan satellite management capacity right now. So they've raised quite a bit of money to do exactly what you're talking about, is the cleanup of space debris.
All right, excellent. Thanks for sharing that with us. Some of the viewers have also put in some other comments about the Kessler syndrome. Now, an excellent question that's come from Dr. Stephen Ung is the following. What do we need to do in terms of business leaders as well as entrepreneurs in terms of a mindset change? And I guess in particular here in Hong Kong as well as Asia, a mindset change and shift in terms of really opening up and recognizing the opportunities of the space economy.
Well, I think one of the first mindset changes we have to have is that this is no longer the thing of science fiction and, just watching it in the movies, in Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that. This is no longer the unreachable future. This is now. This is happening now. I can tell you that because the investments that I've made has already doubled and tripled for instance, SpaceX, the first round that I was involved in was around 20 billion, and then there was a $40 billion round and the recent round was 73 billion, and it's probably north of that already. So this is happening right now. You can make money in that right now, and you can have very exciting careers in that right now. So I strongly suggest that if you guys are interested in this, or if you have kids that are potentially interested in this, or you have students that are potentially interested in this, please reach out to Perry, myself, OASA, as well as Christopher Altman. We would be very glad to help you guys get in touch with some of these programs.
Absolutely. And on that note, we only have about a minute left. Chris, I'd like to thank you very much for all your contributions today. You've opened up a lot of doors in terms of mindset and ideally opportunities within the space economy. Joey, thanks for sharing your insights in terms of entrepreneurship. And with that, I'd like to just close, and please contact us. As Joey said, if you got any further questions, we look forward to next quarter's webinar here at Cyberport and to further explore this wonderful opportunity. So given that, I'd like to just thank everyone, in particular our hosting sponsor, Cyberport, for your very kind and gracious hospitality here, an excellent production crew, and all those who've joined us near and afar in terms of participating in this particular webinar.
And is there a website that they can contact you?
Yeah, there is a website. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn as such, and maybe we just put that on a screen in terms of how we can contact us via social media.
Audio connection kind of cut out there. Yeah, you sounded very far away as you said far, but your audio connection cut out. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Perry. And thank everybody there at OASA.
Okay, and for Christopher Altman and myself, Joseph Jeong, we're also on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. Please feel free to reach out to us as well as Perry Lam on any of the social media, as well as the OASA webpage as well.
That's right, and we'll bring that up now for all those just to stay in contact with us. Look forward to our next session next quarter in terms of our series here at Cyberport with our Entrepreneurship series. So with that, again, thank you for joining today. And the contact details for OASA Hong Kong will be coming up on a screen shortly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is called the Orion Astropreneur Space Academy. Orion, one of the nebulas where stars are born. Astropreneur, entrepreneur, because Hong Kong is basically about business and entrepreneurship. Astropreneur is a creation of business with a space context. New businesses create jobs. So when we talk about space economy, we have to think about jobs. Now these are relevant. And why Space Academy? Because this is a leadership development accelerator. We accelerate leaders and startups for the world, beginning from Hong Kong.
Zone. It's like the United, but it's very pretty.
Space is for everybody. Everybody, not only for certain individuals, but it is for everybody, all humanity. Second, the space economy is already here. And so we have a lot of pioneers who join forces with us. Why is it important that you need to get involved now? Because if we miss this opportunity, it's going to be difficult. And a third is about young people. We need young people, new leaders who can inspire us and take us to the next level. So these are our 3 beliefs.
Come join OASA. The future is already here.
Come join OASA, be our member.
Come join OASA and become a part of the global space economy.
Come join OASA. Let's work together.